Alright, so welcome to episode 1. So in this episode we're going to talk about suspension, bodywork, and exterior lighting. If you read the intro you already knew that, or if you watched the intro you already knew that. I read the intro, which is why it's kind of bland and stale. So anyway, we're not going to do that today. Today we're just going to fly off the cuff, which means lots more rambling, lots more editing, and who knows where we're going to end up going. Alright, so this was going to be episode 1, but after I got to editing it, I realized that I just blabbed non-stop for about 8 minutes about the suspension on this truck, and I didn't want to make the video 15 or 20 minutes, because, you know, who wants to listen to me talk for that long? So what I did instead was, we're going to call this episode 0, and it's going to be just about the suspension, and then episode 1, even though I said it would include suspension work, isn't going to include suspension work. I'm just going to go ahead and make that one about the body modifications, the paint work, and the exterior lighting. So if you've got a truck, mini truck, especially if you've got a Nissan and you want to, you're thinking about lowering it, there should be a lot of good information in this video for you. If you tuned in specifically for body work and things like that, then you know that's going to be in the next episode. So sorry for the change, but we'll just call this episode 0 and move on. Alright, so in order to lower this thing, what I did was I went with a bunch of off-the-shelf parts. There's not a lot much available for this truck, but there's a few things available, and I went ahead and got a hold of some Belltech parts. I used the Belltech shocks, I used the Belltech rear leaf springs, those are a 3-inch drop, and I bought both front and rear sway bars from Belltech as well. I also went through, I believe it was Prothane, and I got some urethane bushings for the front end. And in the front I used a 3-inch drop DJM lower control arm. Those are the parts I used to get the truck lowered, and using those parts and turning down the torsion bars to make everything level, I dropped it 5 inches in the back, 4 inches in the front, and I gotta say it handled fantastic. Alright, so the other thing I did in order to utilize, to make the truck look good and to go along with lowering it was I found a set of Cadillac Escalade wheels. So these were 17-inch wheels, but as you can see in the pictures, they lined up perfectly with the edge of the vehicle. I had the 2-wheel drive fenders still on the vehicle. If you get the 4-wheel drive fenders, they're a little wider, and these wheels won't line up quite as nice with the edge, but they will tuck in nicer on a 4x4 front fender. Now, the thing to know is, in order to get them on the vehicle, you have to actually hog out the opening, in the middle opening, in the back of the wheel a little bit to clear the mounting flange on the truck. You could grind down the mounting flange too if you want, but it's just easier to modify the wheels. And I had a set of neochrome lug nuts, so I went ahead and just threw those on there too, even though they were blue and really didn't match anything. Now, in a lot of these photos you're going to notice it's lower than that, and that's because I went ahead and lowered it a little more because I just wanted the look of it being a little lower. By going ahead and dropping the truck an inch past where all those parts put me, I lost a lot of my handling abilities, and it wasn't because being lower upset the geometry as much as it changed the parts I had going on. When I lowered the truck an extra inch, I just used the torsion bars and loosened them up a little bit to get that extra inch of drop, and it was fine from a look standpoint, but it made the shock length a little too short, so I wasn't able to use the Belltech shocks anymore because they were bottoming out. So the truck obviously didn't handle as well with a hydraulic shock I had to get off a trailer application in order to fit the shorter length. The better way to have done that would have been to use a 2-inch spindle in conjunction with the 3-inch drop control arm, give me a total of 5 inches of drop, and then if I wanted 4 I could just tighten the torsion bars and bring it back up a little bit. But that would have allowed me to retain the correct shock length and still lower the vehicle, which would have made it still handle great. I still would have been able to use the Belltech shocks up front, and that would have been the way to go. So if you want your car to handle well, you don't want the 3 or 4-inch drop. The 4-inch drop is basically a maximum, is what I'm trying to say, by adjusting the torsion bars and using a 3-inch lower control arm in order to be able to put a quality shock on the truck and make it handle without modifying the shock mounts, basically installing new ones and using coilovers or something like that. As far as the back end goes, re-drilling the spring eye was a great thing to do as far as correcting the pinion angle, because when you lower the truck, it's sitting down here. When you bring it up with the leaf spring, the front spring eye stays in the same spot, but the axle itself moves up. It actually rotates the front of your pinion downward, so it's not pointing at the drive shaft at the right angle anymore. So bringing the front spring eye back up actually helps correct that a little bit. And if you really want to be right about it, Take your measurements, make sure your drive shaft angle is correct. You can either cut off and re-weld your spring perches that mount your axle to the leaf spring, or you can get shims from companies like DJM and Belltech. I think maybe not DJM, but Belltech anyway, and other companies out there that have degrees to them and allows you to adjust the pinion angle. As a matter of fact, I have a set. Hang on one second, I think they're right behind me. No, they're not, but hang on a second because I know they're right over here somewhere. Okay, there. So this is a lowering block. This is a 2-inch block. They also come in 1-inch, 3-inch, and 4-inch. And they have pins on them, which help to locate the leaf spring and the rear end. It's got a male and a female on each side of it. So it keeps everything locked in place where it's supposed to be. And this is a leaf spring pin, a wedge. It's called a wedge or a shim. This is a Belltech and it's a 2 degree. So you can use these shims to adjust your pinion angle. Turn it wherever direction you need it. It slides around that pin I just showed you on the block. Fits right over that. And that's what that does. That helps you adjust your pinion angle. So you can use those as well. If you have a welder though, it's just as easy to cut them off, get it perfect where it's supposed to be, and then weld it back on. So basically in the rear I ended up with about a 6.5-inch drop, which was about the maximum you can get away with without your rear diff smacking into the frame every time you go over a bump. The way I avoided it was by adding air shocks to the truck. The reason I went that route rather than doing a C-notch or something like that is because I still wanted the truck to have all its carrying capacity, still want to be able to carry loads in it. So what I did was I modified the mount, the lower mount for the shock absorber, and took it from the back of the spring pert, or the plate, the spring plate, and cut it off of that and welded it to the bottom in the center of the spring plate. And by moving it from up here to down here, I picked up about 1.5 inches of shock length, which made it easy for me to find a air shock that would fit the application. I couldn't find one short enough with the factory mounting location, but by doing that I changed the angle a little bit. It allowed it to ride a little less rough as well because it had less of a steep angle to it. The more angle it has, a little less, it's not quite as rough. And so it rode decent, and all I did was keep just enough air in it when I wasn't carrying a load that it tightened up right before it would bottom out. So it actually rode halfway decent going over bumps and whatnot without smacking into the frame, and I did remove the bump stop completely out of the truck. Whenever I had to throw a load in it, I just pumped a bunch more air into it, and it wasn't really an issue. So that's one way around that situation. All right, so one thing I would want to make clear is I know that you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on these suspension parts like I did. So you can lower these trucks for practically nothing. For $30 or $40 you can buy a lowering block for the back of the truck and drop it even 4 inches. They make lowering blocks up to 4 inches tall. Redrill your spring eye in the back, and get another inch to 1.5 inches out of that. You can get about 5.5 inches out of the rear just doing that, and if you want more you can even remove one of the leaf springs out of the leaf spring pack and drop it down even further. You can also get the front down just by cranking down the torsion bars. Some guys re-index them. You can do that as well, call it rekeying. But you can get the front pretty dang low just doing that stuff. The only problem with that is you'll get the look you want, but it's not going to ride well at all. And it certainly won't handle well either. The thing that I think made the biggest difference on the truck was the gas charged shock absorbers and the sway bars. Those two items probably made the biggest difference in the way the truck handled, and lowering a vehicle just lowers the roll center, and as long as you're not jacking up your suspension geometry, it'll usually handle better just from being lowered. So you know, I wanted the truck to handle well, and I wanted it to be lowered properly, and I wanted it to ride well and ride like a factory vehicle even though it was lower, and I can say that after putting all those parts on there it definitely did. But if you're just on a budget, you just want to get your truck low, it's really easy to just lower it. Pretty much most mini trucks, especially a torsion bar vehicle like the Nissan Hardbody is, and any truck with a leaf spring you can lower just with some lowering blocks. So it's really affordable. I think that's why mini trucks are so popular, and I've always liked them because for next to nothing you can dump them and make them look okay. So anyway, my truck wasn't built for that. It was built to handle, so that's why I spent all the money on it. But you don't have to do that. So that wraps up episode 0, the unplanned episode on lowering your truck. So there's a few things I didn't mention, like once you go lower than about the 6 inches, you're going to need a C-notch and start cutting into your bed and things like that. But I could literally talk for probably an hour, and that would be better as maybe a Q&A type thing, or live, something along those lines. I hope you got good information out of this. I know I probably missed a few things. I might have even misspoken a few times. Don't hate on me too much in the comments. If I did say something that sounded stupid, I didn't mean it to come off that way. But I do appreciate you guys watching, and if you do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. I'm going to try and check those as often as I can. And if I said something that sounded screwy and you want to talk about it, go ahead and throw it in there. If you're just being a troll and a hater, I'm not going to respond to you. But anyone else with a legitimate question or concern, or you found a mistake I made, go ahead and let it know, because if other people are watching this video to lower their trucks, that'll be good information for them to have. So please be sure to tune in for the next episode where I do the bodywork and the lighting, this time for real. And I do appreciate you guys watching. Please go ahead and subscribe if you like what you're seeing, you want to see more of it. It'll help me a lot. And thanks a bunch. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time.
The beat as things I did 20 years ago. What I did 20 years ago is what they're doing